the third video of a three-part series about the funding crisis in Massachusetts facing our schools. And this one is called, What Do the Schools Our Communities Deserve Look Like? Wow. So, I'm going to start with our representatives because you haven't been able to talk much. We're teachers, we talk a lot.
We talk a lot. Well, I come from a slightly an interesting perspective. I have 3 children, all in public school. My oldest is 16 and who's a freshman. And I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. So I've spent, as we were discussing in our break, I've spent about the past 10 years volunteering in the schools. And anyone who has been around me enough knows I always say that teachers are like spit, grit, whole lot of duct tape. I see you guys sharing little teeny tiny pieces of paper. Everything gets saved and scrimped, and you all manage to do an amazing job with very little resources. And sometimes to the point where, and you don't complain very much. And I find that in my experience that teachers get by and they do everything because they care, as we've talked about before. You're doing it because you love kids, and that's why you're there. You're doing it for the kids. And you make do with whatever comes in front of you. And coming from North Andover, but also representing the communities of Methuen, Haverhill, and Lawrence, I've had the opportunity to kind of take a peek into what other schools look like. And there's a lot of disparity within the schools just in the town of North Andover between my child's schools, which has hundreds of volunteers, literally parent volunteers that come in and fill the gaps, whether it be to keep our library open when the libraries were closed. They did library on a cart, they helped with art on a cart and music on a cart and all these other ways of trying to get things into the classroom. And our parents opened the doors of the library that had been shuttered and filling with, as we were talking about, tumbleweeds in the library. And the parents were the ones that brought it back. But there are other schools that didn't have that opportunity because they didn't have the parents. So within the same district, in the same town, there were some kids that were having this enrichment opportunity and others that weren't. At my child's school, there were parents that came in and did math enrichment. We had classrooms that were at 29 kids in a second grade classroom. And how does a teacher teach 29 second graders?
So in the school that you want, in the school the kids deserve, how many kids would be in that classroom?
I don't know, 18, 20?
Nice.
18 or 20. I don't know, if I were a teacher, 4 or 6. But quite honestly, I'm sitting here thinking, how does a teacher have 29 kids with 29 different abilities, and they are little, and they're learning, and they need social emotional, they need to play, they need a second recess, which they don't get because they only get 1 recess a day. They don't get an extra snack time, and teachers are so nurturing, and they do what they can to sort of fit in all those things that they learned in their toolbox. They bring it all every day anyway, and they still have to manage to do all of that, plus comply with data collection and standards and making sure they're meeting standards. And look at my children's school and I say, gee, they have it easy because they're doing well and they're performing well, and the teachers can relax a tiny bit because they know no one's breathing down their neck. But you go to other schools and that data is everything. Yeah. If they're not, those 3 gateway cities, if they're not capturing that data and doing well, they're not getting the funding, or they're threatening to not get the funding they need because maybe they don't have 100 parents banging down the door to come volunteer in their kids' classrooms. And so, we need to do a better job at leveling the playing field, because while in a community like Andover or North Andover, we find parents who fill gaps, that is not always the case. And we can't be relying on parents to make up funding gaps. Right. And I could go on about my opinion as a parent and testing, because I don't like it at all. I get the data collection side, but it's really, really hard as a parent to help alleviate the stress that children feel to perform. Right. And and as a parent, I want to be like, don't even worry about it. But then I know that could hurt the teachers. It's a fine line.
So from your perspective, they would be in smaller class sizes,
classes,
fewer children, and would be able to connect with their teachers more. They would have more recess. Yeah. They would have less testing.
Yeah. And the social emotional piece is painful. The fact that we've sort of removed social emotional from schools and the ability for kids to go out in the playground, fight with their peers and work it out. Right. That's what recess is all about. Right. So by the time you get to high school, this could be a much bigger problem than just, we're fighting over a ball, right?
We're seeing that.
Right, and it's becoming a really big financial drain to the schools too, where they just have to keep putting more and more support, and then they send the money over to the police and and divert it in other places, because now we don't have a 5-year-old who's fighting, but we have a 20-year-old who's fighting. So.
Right. Tron, would you like to?
Yeah, so I completely agree with my counterpart here, Representative Minicucci, but also for me, I love talking aspirationals. I'm going to just say all the things I would love to see. Universal pre-K. I think it starts much earlier than K to 8 or K to 12, because I actually was a Jumpstart AmeriCorps in my freshman year at Tufts University, and I saw just the impact of that one-on-one interactions with younger kids and giving them the opportunities and just, I don't know, basic necessities like food and making sure they have clothing and making sure that their home life. And actually, as a legal aid attorney, I saw a lot of children with trauma. So again, with the emotional learning is key, and it has to start at a very early age. But also, when we're talking about schools, we need to talk about making sure that kids don't go to school hungry. So we have to talk about breakfast, and that's a bill that's exciting. And actually, one of our colleagues is working on a bill to make sure that there's breakfast for all students. And we need to talk about, I forgot who mentioned it, but learning skills. I learned how to sew, and we need financial literacy. We need to learn civics. The kids, it's so much more than what's in the classroom. We need to make sure that we are preparing our students, the next generation, to be ready for the real world, to be ready for college or a trade or whatever else comes after that. And in terms of appreciation for our teachers, I genuinely think that teachers are feeling unappreciated because we're always going back to healthcare coverage, and we're talking about not only supplies but transportation and everything else. This is not a singular problem. We need to look at it in a holistic way. Where are we going to get the revenue? And in terms of advocacy, I mean, the Fair Share Amendment was something I worked on even before I got elected. And this is something we need to continue to work on and push for, to make sure that we have the funding. And again, going back to, I think, your earlier point, is that the funding goes to education.
Just to educate, Fair Share Amendment was the ballot initiative, essentially, the Raise Up Massachusetts. Would have created a 4% tax on income over $1 million. And it would have generated approximately $2 billion in revenue.
I don't remember the exact amount.
It was something along those lines. Definitely enough to cover the mandate in this commission. Can I hear just quickly from teachers the schools that our communities deserve, and what's in the way? How do we get there?
Well, I mean, for me, I think that the Promise Act is the first step to making sure they have the money they need to do these things. And the school that I want, my oldest is about to graduate from Haverhill High. I'd like to see her get some more things. My youngest is only in 4th grade. She's got a long way to go. And I want to see her have more enrichment opportunities during the school day. I want teachers to be able to have time to collaborate together, to be able to identify students that need interventions and to decide what's best for them. And then not to forget about the kids who maybe don't need the extra help, but need something to do, something to engage them and to challenge them. We need time in the day to plan those things for those students, to give them those opportunities. You mentioned all free breakfast, for all students, free lunch for all students. Haverhill's a Title I district. More than half of our students are low socioeconomic status. I know in the summertime we do lunches for for people under age 18 all summer long, but we don't do it during April vacation and February vacation. We don't do it during the winter break in December into January. So things like that. What about the weekends when we want them to do their homework, but they don't know where the next meal is gonna come from? All of that, and of course, it's smaller class sizes. I teach less classes to teach. I teach six classes a day, and I end up with 170 students. So our teachers are overburdened with eighth grade, I give a 5-paragraph essay. My backup cert is math. I know that's almost 800 paragraphs.
Yeah.
That if I could get everyone to actually turn it in, but that's a drain. I get one 45-minute prep a day to plan, grade, collaborate. So we're taking it all home, and that stress gets passed on to the students. Even when I don't have that sword of Damocles of data and numbers over my head.
Right.
I'm stressed over just the sheer volume and the size of the challenge in front of me. And these kids, they're doing it in every single period of the day, and there's no respite, there's no creativity, there's no outlet for them. It's just routine test, routine test, routine test.
Right. Jim?
So I would like schools that provide students with multiple opportunities to develop different types of skills so that when they come out of school, they have a lot of opportunities, different ways that they can go in life. I don't think it's that unrealistic to have students graduating from high school speaking 2 languages, playing several musical instruments, and being able to communicate and interact with the adult world. Because the focus right now, it seems like people are extremely narrow, and they don't have many options when they graduate. It's like, I got to get a job and start paying off debt. And it's not holistic, it's
Right.
not healthy.
Which leads us to the Cherish Act and
Yeah.
helping them actually get through college.
Yeah.
Good. Frank?
Really, 2 points. One, I appreciate being part of this forum. Number one is greater equity across districts.
Yeah,
It's incredible, some of what I'm hearing today, and we certainly have a need here in Andover, and no doubt, I mentioned the desire to have tuition-free kindergarten here. I actually had one of my students write an essay. We just finished a research-based argumentative essay, otherwise known as the opinion essay. And the topic she chose was all children should have free lunch. It shouldn't be a subset of the population. So greater equity across districts is maybe number 1 on my list. But I struggled with number 2, which is staffing levels and a setting that allows the time in the day for every student to have a trusted adult in that building.
Yeah.
When you get to staffing levels that don't have the instructional assistant or the school psychologist or the social worker or the classroom teacher, there are too many students, and this is a big focus of ours, is every student have a trusted adult. So at every level, elementary, middle, high school, those are my 2 visions for the schools.
We're taking the love of learning out of education. And I'm not the brightest star in the sky, nor the sharpest tool in the shed, but I love learning. I've got 3 degrees. I'd go on for my doctorates. I love learning. But I think the teachers of my past have instilled that in me. And I had parents that instilled that in me. And that's what I want kids to have, love of learning. And what we're doing today, because of the data-driven, we're making children feel like they're failing. And we're making them feel like they're failing in the 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, because they didn't get this MCAS, or they didn't get this test that they should have got this in. And these kids are struggling. Mentally, emotionally, they're struggling to be successful. But yet, we make very young children be perceived that they failed. That's wrong. So, so my idea is to imagine having enough money where we have the smaller classrooms where people are getting that individual attention, that we have after-school programs where kids can do something other than just the academics. People have forgot to imagine. They forgot to imagine that with and if there's money, we can make those changes. And in the meantime, we're making beautiful children who are academically capable rise, because they're going to, and we're making so many others who have other skills, and our system's not reaching these kids at all.
Yeah.
And so that's what how I would imagine.
Thank you. And as the only high school teacher at the table, I am going to offer my own vision for what the schools our communities deserve would look like at the high school level. And I'm really echoing a lot of what I've already heard, but smaller class sizes is absolutely essential. If we are nurturing and cherishing schools, there is art and music and rhetoric and excitement in our school buildings. That's what I imagine. That's what I want to see. And it really has disappeared in many ways in the schools. I've been teaching since 2001, and Andover High School is a very different place today than it was in 2001. And it's largely as a result of the data-driven changes, the need for generating the data. As an English teacher, I used to spend my professional development time reading books with my coworkers and coming up with creative, interesting ways to engage teenagers in a story that was maybe written in the 1800s. Not always easy to do. So it's time.
It is time.
We need to speak for those schools. We all need to speak for those schools. So we can do many things. We can write opinion pieces for local newspapers.
Yeah.
Would we all do that?
Yeah.
We can talk to our colleagues in the hallways. Other ideas?
You can get parents to show up at the State House and lobby their legislators.
Yes.
Just call
They
them.
can call.
Or do both.
Showing up is awesome. Bringing in 16, 17-year-olds especially, but any age is really the most empowering thing. And I was talking about this earlier today, actually, that the most meaningful, those kids, they're experiencing life. They're not there. They're not worth a vote to somebody or a donation check to anybody.
Right.
They are there purely because they feel really passionately about an issue that they are living in their life. And I feel like, to me, that is the most moving piece, is for legislators to really hear from the kids who are in the school. So it's great to hear from teachers too, and I think it's important for all the
Absolutely.
teachers to be showing up all the time, but really from students. Really
need
to
the community.
Really feel the community so they can talk about the stress of taking tests and feeling like a failure because they still did great, but they don't feel like they did good enough. Or because we were just talking that there are some kids that have to go and ask every single trimester for a grant so they can play a sport. Sports aren't free because the school
right.
nurse who says to me, is there any chance you could run over some snacks because I've got kids who need food and I'm out and I have no place left to turn.
Right.
Nobody should have to worry about that stuff every day. So, and I think hearing from people who are living it every day is the most powerful thing that anybody can do.
Okay.
Really.
One thing we're doing in Haverhill is trying to bring together, like we brought together Methuen, Tewksbury's come out, we've sent people down to Tewksbury to support them and trying to build coalitions.
Yeah.
And so last month, I and other teachers from the area, and Deb was there too, we knocked on doors in the neighborhood of my school in Haverhill, and we just started talking to people about, what do you like about the schools, what would you change? And those conversations open those doors to have them come to the meeting, come to a rally at the State House when we do that, and to be a part of the conversation. So many of these the people that we met had never been invited to have a voice and to say what we talked about our ideal schools. We want to ask the parents, what are your ideal schools? So we knocked on the doors to say, what is it that you'd want to see? If we have a meeting to vision, to plan, would you come? Would you invite your friends? Would you, we're thinking about, asking people, would you host a coffee or, a social in your neighborhood? And that way we come to you. So you have to go to the people where they're at and let them know that there is a place where they can, express their views and advocate for what they want. There's a lot of energy in Haverhill right now because of the underfunding and the way our schools are many of them crumbling down around us, but they don't know where to put it. So we're working with as many organizations as we can put together to channel that energy and push local government on top of state government and nationally with the NEA to increase that funding. Glad to have you along, knocking on doors and asking people what they think, because what's true in Haverhill is true in Lawrence, is true in Andover, and all of these, the Merrimack Valley. So.
I'd like to also add in that, and to invite both of you, we need substitute teachers in Methuen.
High quality substitutes.
And really,
it's a
it's a
huge
personal
problem.
invitation. The kids would love you. I mean, I have no doubt. But to come in to experience what some of
Yeah.
these issues are, and you can see it. But it would be nice if all legislators could come in
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
substitute.
School
And,
committee
I
members.
was just
Yeah,
talking to a colleague about
absolutely.
it, and she said, "Deb,
It should be
invite them
mandatory.
into
Yeah.
sub."
Yeah.
So there
Sure.
you
Want to serve
go.
on this board? You
You're
gotta come
welcome.
in.
It really should be mandatory that if you're going to make decisions about, especially on the
And
local level.
substitute.
I mean, there's 6 school committee members in Haverhill. They can give up a day a month and be a substitute
Exactly.
teacher and really know
See what it's like.
it's
Talk
like
to
in
the
these
kids.
classrooms that their decisions carry so much weight over. I'd love to see Mayor Fiorentini come spend a day
Exactly.
in my
Maybe you have to
classroom and see
invite them.
just the
Absolutely.
adventure that it can be in 8th grade.
All
in
right,
those
well,
conditions.
I am going to bring the conversation to a close because we promised to get everybody out the door on time. So I want to thank you all for being here and being part of this conversation. There's energy in the streets. We're going to bring the fight to the State House. We're going to convince DeLeo and Peisch that this is the right thing to do. The Promise Act is the right solution, and we're going to get it done. So thank you all for coming. I do want to let people know that you can learn more about upcoming activities for the Fund Our Future campaign at fundourfuture.org. Thank you all.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.